And we are live. Hello, good morning, good afternoon,
Hello.
good evening. Hello,
Yeah.
Rohit. How are you doing?
Yeah. Ignore my messy hairs. Don't know what.
That is
Yeah.
all good. That is all good. That is all perfectly fine. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the our first solo.io extreme, like just learn in public stream. And I hope that everyone that's here today gets an opportunity just to kind of understand how we think when we're going out to build things and how we go about researching, learning, whatever. Rohit came up with this idea, like let's kind of get together, let's work together to try and like learn things together, learn a different set of technologies, especially in the DevOps space. And we decided let's stream this stuff. So I think this was a brilliant idea. Thank you so much for proposing this, Rohit. This is going to go a very long way for us. So before we actually jump into things, why don't we quickly introduce ourselves? I'll let you go first, and I'll introduce myself right afterwards.
Yeah. So I'm Rohit Ghumare, and I'm currently working as a developer advocate at a Solo. So Marina and I both are developer advocates. If you don't know what developer advocate do, so it is like a position who deals with every team in the company. So they are like backbone of your company type of thing. So we are simple people. So we just being active on the various platforms. We write the content. We make the content, and we uh, try to organize everything, and try to make it as simple as it can to public can easily grasp it, user or clients, or it can be students or professionals also. So that is our job. But talking about myself, I'm like I'm you will see me active on the various platforms like Twitter, LinkedIn, and other platforms are podcast ones. So yeah, find me everywhere. And if you need any help with the community building and or DevOps, feel free to reach out. I will surely help you with the same. Yeah, Marina, you can do it.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that, Rohit. For all of you, I know you already know me. My name is Marino Wijay. I am a developer advocate at Solo. Thank you so much. My wife brought my drink here. Um, Developer advocate at solo.io. Much like what Rohit does, I'm out in the community just talking about a variety of DevOps technologies, but more specifically around like networking DevOps technologies. And we're talking about things like service meshes and container networking interfaces and things in between, because there's a lot that goes on. There's a lot of mechanics that goes on behind the scenes. I think like today, I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to stream about the Istio Service Mesh and what it can do, how it helps with microservices in a containerized world. So, for example, um, some of the challenges that you'll experience with a service mesh is, or sorry, not with a service mesh, with a containerized environment, is that how do you trust different services? How do you observe them? How do you route to them, especially when you scale? And technologies like service mesh actually help with this. I mean, there were technologies even before service mesh came to be that helped with this, that assisted with these particular challenges, but they were in pieces, and you basically had to deploy them individually, manage them individually, life cycle them individually, and that created a lot of unnecessary administrative overhead. So service mesh comes along and says, hey, I can do all of this for you. We still adhere to the same nature of distributed control data plane and management plane, except we integrate really well with Kubernetes. And Istio happened to be that one particular technology that was so Kubernetes native. So, there's a lot of technical depth to what goes on in a service mesh. But what I'd like to do is maybe, let's just kind of dig into it. And as we're going along, we can explain things. What do you think,
Yeah,
Rohit?
yeah. So we are planning like this. Like Marina is well expert in the networking kind of a background. So as his background is in networking, he will guide me through the every path of how we can build the Istio service mesh and how we can integrate that service mesh with the various other tools. So meanwhile, we will also provide some of the tool means like understanding and learnings about us, like how the Solo is building the service mesh industry and how they are trying to solve everything. So we are like you can say the leaders in the Istio and Service Mesh, and we are providing various services to various type of things. So yeah, catch up with us and try to be interacting with us. So yeah, if you have any questions in meanwhile, and if you feel like you can solve that doubts where we are stuck, feel free to text in the chat box below. And yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, tell me like Marina, how to see forward. So actually we have not like we don't have any deck, we don't have anything for this live stream. We are just waking up, and he is from morning wake up, and I am waking up from afternoon sleep. So yeah, we will see like how it will go, and yeah, seeing forward to it.
Yeah, so let's assess a few things first, right? So we're creating a little small lab environment. It's not going to be productionized or anything like that. But something that we have to consider is that if we want to run something like Istio, we probably want to go look at the Istio docs first and see what the requirements are to get up and running. The Istio docs will tell us a couple of things, like the environment we need to prepare ahead of time, which I guess could either be a kind cluster or even like a cluster on a cloud provider like Civo or even Google Cloud. It doesn't really matter. It really is up to you. As long as you can get to a state where you have a functional Kubernetes cluster that has access to a load balancer, then you'll be able to deploy Istio and then everything afterwards. But why don't we do that? Why don't we head to the Istio docs first? Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, yeah. Right.
Perfect. Yeah, and in the Istio docs, we'll dig around. We can actually go right to the get started section, because in the get started section, it's going to tell us all the things we need to get going pretty quickly. But in the meantime, I hope everyone here is having a wonderful day. It's September, surprisingly. Like literally, it just felt like we were mid-August yesterday, and all of a sudden, boom, September just shows up, and whoo, oh my gosh. And you know what's really funny? This morning was really cold. So it was about 10 degrees Celsius, which is about, I would say, I don't know, 40, 45 Fahrenheit. So it was pretty
Yeah.
chilly this morning, which, in a lot of ways, I kind of enjoy. I don't like it being too hot, but I also don't like it being too cold. But if it was consistently like this all times, I would love it. So, all right, we got Rohit's stream up and running. Let's get going. So I think we'll skip a lot of the what is Istio because we kind of already described it. However, I think let's get to the point where we can get going, right? Go to the documentation, and anyone that is interested to know more details about it can obviously go to istio.io and check out some of the concepts. But in Istio, there are three key tenets, right? Traffic management, observability, and security. Now, all of these three things are achieved by usage of something called a sidecar. Let's back up a bit. What is a sidecar? A sidecar is actually a proxy that actually lives inside of a pod alongside your main container. So when you actually look at your pod inside of Kubernetes, if you have a sidecar running, you'll see two containers in that pod. Now, why this is important is that container, that secondary container that actually is that sidecar, is that proxy, is the one that is intercepting and receiving and also communicating on behalf of your main container, your application container. Now, why the heck would you want to do this? Why is this important? So if you think about, for a second, codifying your routing intelligence into your app, it actually can be challenging to do so and make changes to that every time your app has to grow and every time your app has to talk to other apps. So rather than doing this inside of your code, remove that function from code and put it into a sidecar that can still understand what your app is doing, but will also proxy those connections on behalf of it. So now we can get that granular routing that we want. And when I say routing, we're actually routing at layer 7, at the HTTP layer, because the HTTP layer provides us so much valuable information about what the traffic is, the type of application it might be, the payload that could exist in there, any sort of protocols or header information that we need to be worried about, or even just to take into consideration when we actually have to make a routing decision. So it's really interesting how this all works out. And a lot of this fundamental routing concept actually comes from the networking world. If you actually go down the stack of the OSI model, a lot of this stuff actually happens at layer 4 and below as well. Anyways, the other thing that the sidecar is doing for us is it actually captures telemetry data about the actual main container. So say for a second, you wanted to capture log information about that container, or you wanted to see the health, the HTTP health, whether or not it's providing the correct HTTP status codes, the correct ones, the ones that say success or not. Well, the sidecar is going to do that for you, but normally you would have to provide that intelligence at the app layer. But the challenge is we don't want to do that anymore. We don't want developers codifying this anymore or making the static definitions. So let the sidecar do it. Let the proxy do it. The last thing is identity and security, and even authorization for that matter. So if we didn't have sidecars, how would you go about telling your container that it is allowed to talk to another container? You would have to build that logic right into your application. You would have to build a certificate of trust into your application. But imagine if you're trying to rotate certificates all the time and make sure that they're always valid, make sure that they're changed so that you're not exposing yourself to vulnerabilities. It's not worthwhile doing this inside of your code base. You may as well do this in a sidecar proxy. Now, this is why we use something like a service mesh. Now, there's a question here in the chat. Working with, or maybe there's not a question here, working with Istio Service Mesh microservices migration, it seems to me that it will help me a lot. I'm studying this tool more. Perfect. Thank you so much, Andre. I hope you learned something from this. Kyle, welcome to the live stream. Great to have you here, man. I'm really excited. Julia, I gave you that T-shirt. I remember we were at the AWS Summit in New York, and I hooked you up. I will never forget that. Now, I know you also have the little plushie, so maybe you can bring that up one day. Maybe we'll get you to stream one day. Maybe Kyle will get you to stream one day as well. Anyways, we'll keep moving on. Now, that identity, right? Going back to that sidecar and identity, the sidecar proxy itself holds that identity. It actually gets that identity through a number of mechanisms. Like I'm not going to go into depth, but in a very simplistic manner, Kubernetes knows about the application. There's a control plane in a service mesh that will talk to Kubernetes to understand what that application is. And it'll take that information, that data, and create an identity for it. And it'll feed that identity over to that application. And it'll tell that application, use this identity to identify yourself to other services. This way you establish a level of trust in your environment. This way you can establish a level of encryption in your environment in the data path between your two applications, so that if anyone was in the middle to try and sniff some of that traffic, they would not understand what the heck's going on. So the sidecar is effectively a router that is doing things like observability, traffic management, and security for your application workload. Now the interesting thing is, when you have 1,000 different services inside of your Kubernetes environment, inside of your microservices environment, it means you're going to have 1,000 sidecars that are going to be routing, making decisions on behalf of that container. Now, we've done some inception here with the sharing of the screen, so I'm hoping that Rohit can fix that quickly. Rohit, yeah, got it. All right, so let's actually get started. Why don't we go right under setup and hit that get started link? So yeah, exactly. Let's go there and let's read through this quickly. Why don't you share some details about your, or you can read through it. I'll keep quiet for a bit.
Like it lets you quickly evaluate Istio. So they are telling like if you are familiar, then yeah, this is for deployment advanced models. So if you have any questions, go to this. So it is like simplified documentation. One of the documentation I have seen like much simplified because it is open source. So yeah, every open source document is quite easy to understand. And I started learning DevOps and technologies to the docs only. So this will really help if you want to learn and get into the DevOps and these technologies, security technologies, and everything. Try to understand docs first. Then you will not require any detailed course or something. So yeah, these steps require you to have a cluster running a supported version of 1.25. Okay, 25 is my version. Okay. You can use any supported platform, for example, Minikube. So are you many people try to install the Kubernetes on the local system by using the Minikube. So yeah, this is supported. So I guess we can try it. So follow these steps like download and install Istio and deploy the sample application. Open the application to outside traffic view. Okay, okay, let's do it.
So
So
before you begin, right, I want you to consider the cluster that you want to use. Do you think that Minikube might be the right cluster for this environment? I mean, yeah, it's a supported cluster type, but then the thing you have to consider is that
yeah.
Minikube's going to provide some dictation around how you would set up that environment, right? So
Mm.
um, thoughts maybe, I mean, so Minikube's an option. What about Civo? Civo Kubernetes, is that an option too?
Yeah, that is like just in click you can get started with the Kubernetes cluster. So it is really awesome. We can do that also. We can use the kind cluster also. We can use the another one microcats also. But I really prefer like we can go with the Civo cluster or Minikube. So what do you think? We can go with the
I
anyone.
think I think for simplicity's sake, let's try Civo
Okay.
Kubernetes.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, let's get our cluster up and running. But before that, let's make sure we also review the requirements. Like, does it have any sort of specific resource requirements? Do we have to have particular node sizes? And the reason I'm bringing this up is when we deploy Istio, we're deploying pods that are going to consume CPU and memory and even disk. So we also want to make sure that we have the appropriate amount of resources to accommodate for these kinds of deployments, right?
Is Civo
Civo won't
supported
show
it?
up. Civo probably won't show up because there probably isn't a guide written to it. And this actually creates another task. We can create an open source contribution here to create a guide for how to deploy.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're just creating more work for us, but it's also contributing work. Like we're literally basically contributing to a guide for people to use Civo instead. But anyways, you could probably take an example, like look at the platform prerequisites up there at the top. Yeah, let's click in there and let's see what it actually tells us. So a lot of this stuff you can kind of skip because most Linux operating systems will have this
Mm.
already pre-configured anyways, so we don't have to worry
Yes.
about this.
They're just modules and remarks for the same.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's
I'm
do
just
that.
curious if it says anything about like the actual resource sizes or anything like that. No.
No, I guess it is nothing, just modules and remarks.
So another
So
thing,
just it is just helping with us with like which proxy is available and which is not. And another thing is which NAT gateways and proxies, NAT proxies is available. Yeah, that much is given, not the resource requirements. Hello.
let's use Kubernetes, Google Kubernetes engine as an example. If you look at the left-hand pane there, under set, or actually, yeah, click on that, and that should give us an idea of the node size we should use. So they're using an N1
Yeah,
standard M type, 4 nodes. So maybe we can do something very similar.
yeah, yeah, standard one. Okay.
So an N1 standard would be like probably either a 2 vCPU and a 4 gig of RAM is what I think it is. But that's okay. Like this is completely fine. It gives us an idea. I guess now if you want, like if you since you know, we could head over to the Civo cloud environment and even set up.
Yeah, it will be like my first time entering into the Civo.
Oh, really? Oh, you've never been. Okay, even better. Let's go. Let's get in. Let's log in.
Mm, I guess I had tried sometime, but I have never used. So Civo provides free credits, so we
But
can
hold on,
use
hold
that.
on. You have you had the developer advocate program, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But is that directly available, or did I
It
ask?
should be in
Should I
your
ask?
account already, depending on the email you signed up with.
Okay, okay. Okay, let's check how much I have. Where it is available?
If you go under your manage, it should be under manage. Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Right
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Ooh,
I have you $1,000. Yeah.
some damage you could do there. So for anyone interested, Civo offers a developer advocate program which you can sign up for, and they will give you $1,000 worth of credits to use in a year. Now, this can be used for your demos, for live streaming like we're doing, and quite honestly, all they ask for is that you talk about Civo. That's really it. I mean, nothing special. I will say though that they do put quota limits on you so that you don't go a little overboard with your deployments and you keep yourself in check. But yeah, it works out pretty well. So yeah, I mean, there's a few things that I would recommend though before you begin with your first cluster, Rohit. I would
Yeah.
recommend you pull down your Civo CLI because the one thing you'll have to do is you'll have to pull down your kube config file. So
Okay.
your kube config file, you could manually merge it into your existing kube config, but that takes a little bit of hacking away, which quite honestly, I don't think is going to be fun for you. So there's a
Yeah.
couple of things you can do here, right? You could do that, or you could go download the Civo CLI, tie an API key to your Civo CLI to your account, and you can even read about it. And once you have that up and running, you should be able to pull your kube config, and I can show you how to do that. So let's go.
Okay.
Let's go and click the Civo CLI.
I guess I have to click here, right?
Yeah.
Click here to learn. So Civo is saying like prerequisite for the purpose of this guide, you will need to have an Civo account. Yeah, I have. So downloading Civo CLI, I guess it's just requires to brew setup. So homebrew if you have, then it is easy for Mac OS. Is there Linux one any similar other thing? Uh, oh, it is directly recommended for Mac OS. Okay, let's use directly. Yeah. Uh, are you there?
I am here.
Okay. Should I create any environment?
No, I mean you could use your local MacBook, and once you open up your terminal, I know we can't see the terminal here because here's the thing, right? You're gonna have to get an API key from your Civo account. Now, the challenge here is that you don't want obviously the public to see your API key because if they have that, they can even set up Civo CLI and then have access to your account, which we don't want,
Okay.
obviously, right?
Okay.
So you can either create the API key now and share it with everyone, but then you'll have to go back in and change it after the fact. Entirely up to you. Or you can just do this offline, which quite honestly, either one works, either approach works.
You tell me like how to do it.
So there's a few things we can do. So let's read through the instructions. It wants you to install Civo. So follow those commands: brew tap Civo dash tools.
Let me create one. Yes. Live stream. Can you see my terminal?
I can't see anything. I can only see your one window.
Okay. So should I share the terminal?
Yeah, if you want to share the terminal, so we don't necessarily have to follow along here, but you'll be the one that'll guide us through the instructions, unless you want to share your entire screen, which I don't think you want to do.
Yeah, I'm sharing the entire screen. So
Okay.
is this available?
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I guess it's available.
you'll have to minimize the stream window. Yeah, there you go. Cool.
Yeah, it is available.
Perfect. So now what you want to do is exactly as those commands. Yep. Hey, Pratik Kumar, how are you?
Which password it is asking for me?
This is your local password, your Mac password.
Keychain. No, no, it is not asking. It is asking something keychain. Okay, bit credential keychain. Is this new?
No, it's part of your Mac keychain. I'm not sure what your password should be. Maybe it's your Git password. I'm not sure. I've never seen this before.
Yeah, same for me.
If this doesn't work, we could also use the curl command instead of the brew command.
Okay, yeah.
So the curl, yeah, perfect. Now you see that command right there, sudo mv in your terminal.
Yeah. So it is asking us to move the temporary file to the
Correct.
our main country.
Yep.
Our main country. Yeah.
And
So
then that's your Mac password. Sorry, I'll be right back. My dog's trying to exit. He's trying to escape.
okay, sure. So it is asking for us like there are more instructions for different operating systems such as Windows. That yeah, as I asked, like there is a Linux or nothing. So for Linux, the Windows system they have given this link, so you can check here also. So after installation, it is saying us like you should be able to run Civo from your terminal. So let's check, can we run or not? Okay, so see, we are in slow down. Yeah, it is completely working fine. So it is providing us the manual. So
Yeah, your command is working. The only other thing you need to do now is set up your key, your API key. So if you read further down in the instructions, it'll actually provide some details on how to do that.
first click select your API key. Make sure you can access your account using CLI. Your Civo account will have one created for you already. You can see it here. So let me stop sharing the screen and okay, let me copy the API key.
Yep, that's fine. So for those understanding what's going on here, or wanting to understand what's going on here, we actually have to issue an API key or API token from the Civo CLI or Civo.com website through Rohit's account, because what ends up happening is that the token is going to be used and paired with the Civo CLI to authenticate against his account so that he can start issuing commands to turn up the cluster or pull a configuration. This is just an authentication mechanism, and this is probably one of the most simplest approaches to doing so.
Yeah, I'm adding the Civo API key.
Yeah. So a tip for everyone, right? If you like, I don't know how to blur out information, but what you can always do is open up a terminal, a separate terminal, and create an environment variable that is global for all your terminals, and that environment variable should carry over to your other terminal, and that'll allow you to then run the command without actually calling the actual like or pasting the actual key. You just call out the variable itself. That way, you can make it easier on people just wanting to see how this all works out. But Yeah.
Yeah, I have done that setup already. So
Okay.
let me start the cluster. So are we using directly this type of thing? It's like directly creating the cluster directly, or we should prefer
No,
any
we're just going to use
nodes
it.
and all? Yeah, yeah.
We'll just use this to download the kube config, but we'll go back to the civo.com platform on the website and create our cluster.
Okay.
So let's go back to civo.com. Oh, no. Let's go to the web page, right? And let's launch our first cluster. You're right here. You're right where you need to be under Kubernetes. Yep, right here. Stay here. There we go.
Yeah, I am individual. So I am individual, but with my, what should I choose?
Just I guess put your address and information for now. If you want to stop sharing your screen, that's okay too, because I don't think it'll let you proceed without.
Sorry, audience, I am like disturbing you that this much.
That's okay. This is why this is why it's a stream. It's not polished or anything like that. Things can go wrong. Things
Yeah, like it is nice. Like we are showing from scratch, like how to make the Civo Cloud account also. So
yeah,
how
like
can you? Yeah,
to be honest, like anyone here should get a good sense of how to get going pretty quickly, right? But the ultimate end goal is if we get this up and running quickly, we should be able to get an app up and running before, I don't know, maybe in the next 45 minutes or so. It actually shouldn't take that long. But in the meantime, right? So I'll talk a little bit about, just
I want to add something also.
yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, Civo. After that, it also asks us to add the cardholder name after you add the address. So I just want to inform that also.
Yeah, so you'll need a personal credit card, but it won't be billed until you run out of that credit, if you have that credit. So in my case, I also have my personal card set up there as well. It's not a big deal. I mean, at the end of the day, I work for a company that, because we're using this for work purposes, I can always just expense those fees back. So yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal. But what I would say is dig into that developer advocate program, because $1,000 worth of credits will take you very, very far. Even if you sign up like freshly, like with a new account for Civo, you'll absolutely get at least $250 to use in a month. You could do a lot of damage with that. Like you could do a lot of things. You can learn a lot, but it's entirely up to you if you can maximize. So why Civo, right? Civo is very here. I'm going to share my screen so you can kind of get a visual of what I see, right? Let me share my screen window, Civo.
Yeah, so
Oh,
I'm adding my uh, this one also, like I use travel card. So yeah, I will add that one.
yeah.
Like Marine also uses one. I use the Neo global card. So yeah, let me use that one.
So to answer your question about why Civo, right? If you actually go directly to Civo's website, look at all of the options you have. You have Kubernetes, compute, load balancers, volumes, networking, and manage. Now, to a lot of people, you'd be like, "Hey, that doesn't seem very featurific." Let me ask you something. When you go to a cloud provider, you're only there to do a few things. You're not there to look at all of the portfolio to like mess around with everything that's in the portfolio. So I'm very purposeful, and I want a purposeful environment that I can work off of. Kubernetes is an environment that I like to be working on top of, and sometimes trying to do this in other cloud providers is not easy. It could be even more expensive. Civo is a perfect place for me to test out a lot of different scenarios that I want. It's very fast for a cluster to spin up. I can even deploy compute and have that compute communicate with my Kubernetes cluster. So quite honestly, like it's very specific and to the point. It doesn't have all the extra noise, it doesn't have all the extra features. But that's the purpose of Civo. They're not trying to compete with AWS. They're not trying to compete with Google Cloud. They're actually trying to provide a consistent managed Kubernetes experience, while also simplifying the experience. And this is perfect to add to your multi-cloud strategy. It's perfect for staging. It's perfect to run your production workloads on. And the way they operate their cloud is really on point. So it's worthwhile considering if you're trying to launch a bunch of tests, or if you want to run small production workloads on, or even if you want a global presence. They offer global presence through a variety of different regions. So a few things to think about. All right, I'll stop sharing because I think Rohit, you have your stuff ready to go, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and add it back.
Yeah, let me share my screen. So I have done the setup, everything. So address and it asks for credit card, debit card, but yeah, my debit card also work. So yeah, you can start with debit card also. Still asking for the credit card. Hmm. Does it need for any verification or something?
Uh, Not sure what it wants you to do, but
Let me check again.
all right. While Rohit is working through that, I'll show you how to create a cluster from my point of view so that you get a sense of how this all works out. But I'm under my compute section. If I go to my Kubernetes section here, all I need to do is click create new cluster, right? And the name I can give it is anything. So we could do solo.io stream as a cluster, and I can assign as many nodes as I want. I'll just go down to one node because I don't really need much. And we'll do something very basic. We can do a medium configuration for now. Actually, let me do 2 nodes here. 2-node configuration. And actually, if you look at if you look down below, you can actually deploy a number of different configurations for different marketplace solutions, softwares, right? So
Yeah,
CI/CD.
yeah.
I'll go.
Okay, so sorry, Marina, for confusion. So
Mhm.
what it does, I got idea. So if you start the account, you create one account. So you add the address, you add the credit card or debit card. But after that, this is first cloud provider I am seeing. They are compulsorily ask you to set the billing alerts. So if you don't set the billing alerts, you will not allowed to create the Kubernetes cluster.
That
So
is
I had,
interesting.
yeah,
That's new.
yeah, it
Hmm.
is really awesome thing, because if you don't create the alerts, you will get means like I have seen various times in the AWS cloud thing. So I was a cloud ambassador for the AWS. So what happened, so I was recommending AWS for many purposes, but I told them like take the billing alerts, choose the billing alerts. So
Hmm.
what happens, they don't choose the billing alerts, and after month what happens, they should say like AWS is expensive. So it's your job to set the alerts, because you don't know, like if you are setting up anything, like you have set up any project, after some days you will forget like I didn't stop that instance. But during that days, it has already deducted your so much amount, so you will see like you will say like it is expensive and all. So yeah, all ever and ever always set up the billing alert, so it will really help you. It is like nice thing, so you will not get a huge bill at the month end. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think billing alerts should be set up for every account you set up, regardless of the cloud provider. That being said, let me quickly carry on here. And I think you'll set up a cluster on your end, and I'm just going to go through the process very quickly so that people will see what it's like. But quickly, I gave it a name. I specified 2 nodes. I've left the network default. Firewall can be default 2 if I wanted to. But if you select create new firewall, right? So think about this for a second. Open port 80 for non-encrypted web traffic, open port 443 for encrypted web traffic, 6443 for Kubernetes. Why do we do this, right? Let's think about this for one quick second. I want to be able to access the Kubernetes API using kubectl. I need to open this up so I can access node information. I can capture any kind of data. I can interact with the API. These other ports are also open so that I can expose services. In fact, I can even open this all up in case I decide I wanted to use non-standard ports. So, a couple of considerations here. We'll do something very basic just to make, a minimal configuration. But if we ever run into issues, we can always come back and update the firewall under networking firewalls. Because once we do, we can make any sort of changes and expose additional services as needed. Now, the only other thing I'll point out is the node size, and there are different node types. You can go standard, performance, CPU, or RAM optimized. But for the sake of our setups, we should stick with basic configuration just so that we don't blow out our credits or anything like that. So in my case, because I have 2 nodes, it's $40 a month. And the other thing to consider is Civo provides the control plane for you. So you don't have to pay for the control plane. I'm fairly certain about that because I haven't seen any control plane charges on my end, which is one of the very few cloud providers that now don't charge for a control plane service. Last couple of things. If you look here under the advanced options, you have 2 options for container networking interfaces. If you plan on doing network policy, then Flannel probably wouldn't be the right CNI for you. If you want an advanced container networking interface that can do a lot of different things a normal networking environment could, Cilium is probably where you want to go. So you'll pick Cilium because it'll auto deploy the Cilium CNI for you, which means you don't have to deploy it yourself. You can still deploy it yourself, but this makes it easy. So I selected that, and all I do is I create my cluster. And here's the most interesting thing about this. So as I'm gone to create my cluster, it'll auto, figure out what I'm trying to do. It actually, on the back end creates a config file that's getting passed into the Civo API, and it'll tell you how much time is remaining for that cluster to come online. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Rohit, let's flip back to yours, right? And let's see what's going on your end, because my cluster is on its way up and online.
Yeah, so I'm choosing the media, and then Cilium as you suggested. I also like Cilium. We don't need marketplace for now, so yeah, just creating the cluster with the medium standard size.
Awesome. So you're selecting Cilium as the CNI, using 2 nodes. Perfect.
I guess if you from audience, if you want to learn more about this Cilium, what the Cilium does, what is the use of Flannel, and what is Cilium. So means like I and Marino will suggest like go with the workshops we have already on the Solo Academy. So they will nicely help you understand like what the Cilium does, why to use the Cilium, or why to use the Flannel, why to use the Canal. So these are the CNI providers. So what is CNI? That will also you come to know like we have some plans and all. So check that Solo Academy. It is nice thing. Like you will understand Istio Service Mesh demos and all. So it has some labs also. So that labs are very well curated. Some of the labs are created by Marino only. So a big shout out to Solo Academy.
Yeah, exactly. And we even run live workshops too. So if you go over to our website, there's a section to learn, and then you can get information about our running workshops. Hey, Kunal, welcome. Thank you so much for showing up on the stream here. I appreciate you coming by. I guess we've been talking so much about Civo. Your ears must have been burning, and that's why you showed up today. This is awesome. So we can keep going past 9 o'clock or past 6:30 your time, Rohit, if that's okay with you.
No problem.
And just to the point where we can get Istio up and running, and even get a basic app up and running.
I guess we want to download now kubeconfig, right?
So don't click that button. There's a reason why, because I don't want you to have to merge them manually, because and we can show that another time, but I'm just thinking about time, and I'm also thinking about ways we can speed this up. So what I'd like you to do is if you can also share your terminal, because I'm assuming you've got your API key tied into it right now.
Yeah.
Type in Civo Kubernetes LS.
Civo Kubernetes
LS.
L
S as in Sam.
LS. Okay.
So this command will just list out the Kubernetes clusters, which for some reason is not showing because I think you didn't tie your API key. Did you?
I have done already.
Hmm. That should have worked then.
Let me add the API key again. So
Yeah,
just check.
no worries. So there might be a step that you might just need to, add because you can define the API key, but then there's also another, I think, one more command to be able to pull it down.
Oh, got it. Got it.
Hey, Arib, welcome to the live stream. Thank you so much for coming by. By the way, just a few shout outs. If you aren't already, go check out Julia on Twitter. Follow her. She just hit just over 10K. She's so fantastic. She's so full of energy. There's so much information she shares. There's so much motivation she shares. Follow Arib too. Arib shares a lot of threads on, container fundamentals, Docker, even some DevOps related technologies. And finally, y'all have to be following Kunal, obviously. If you're not following Kunal, we have to talk. We have to have a conversation because Kunal's the GOAT. He is the OG when it comes to teaching people in the most simplest manner possible with the most amount of impact, the most amount of value out of that. So go hit them up, go follow them. They're brilliant folks. All right. So you seems like you got it's not working still?
Yeah.
Oh, it should work now. Oh no, it's still not working. Something must be off.
There was two steps.
Mhm.
We have to add the Kubernetes key,
Mhm.
and then we have to set the current key to the key we just added.
Mhm.
And now we are ready to deploy our cluster. So I
Oh,
did
welcome.
that.
Welcome, Kumar. Thank you so much for showing up. Kumar is saying set the environment variable to NYC in context.
Okay. Let's do one thing. I'm creating new key,
Mhm.
and we will use that one.
Okay, no worries. That's fine.
Because I guess I added the credit card afterwards, so that's why it can be problem. So let's create a new API key and use that one.
Perfect. Yeah. Another shout out to Kumar. Kumar is awesome. Kumar is amazing. Kumar is that guardian angel that will show up on your streams and will help you. You know what? I've done a number of personal streams, and Kumar has always shown up, and he's always provided guidance if I have a run into some sort of pitfall or something like that. And that's what I love about Kumar. He's out in the community. He's part of the Kube Simplify community, if I'm not mistaken, as well. That's run by Siam Pathak. And also, yet another shout out to Siam for building out Kube Simplify. Another great community that, if you're in the stream, you should go check out. Let me share your screen again. Okay, seems like you're running into a few challenges here with your Civo CLI. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to share my screen. My screen is massive. So here's what I'll do. Okay. So I'm going to share my terminal. And then I'll switch to sharing my, actually, I don't think I need to do much in my terminal here. So let me clear this out. Civo, Kubernetes, ls. Now in my case, I'm able to see all three clusters that I have running.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the exact command, but I think it's Civo Kubernetes config --save --merge. Civo Kubernetes config. I got to provide the cluster name, I think. I can't remember which order. Config maybe solo.io stream and then --save. Perfect. Now I can use these commands kubectl config use context solo.io stream and switch my kubectl command line to point to that context so that now when I run commands against the Kubernetes API, it's targeting that cluster's API, as we can see here. So now you can see, like, I've got two nodes in my cluster up and running, up and going, which means things are looking pretty good, which means I should be able to proceed to install things like Istio and whatnot. Now, in my case, what I need to do now is let's go back to the docs here. Let's review the docs. And okay, so you can see my screen. Let's go to istio.io. The documentation. Let's go to get started. So we have our cluster up and running, and we want to download the latest version of Istio. So I'll go ahead and do that. There's a few commands that it wants me to run. But the interesting thing is, let's do this all. I wish there was a way to just share parts of my screen and not my entire screen, because I really want to show my terminal at the same time as showing my...
Yeah. Okay, so I guess you can choose the entire screen type and you can divide the screen. Otherwise, you can show the tab. And then,
I will, you know what? Hold on a second. Hold on a second. All right. Here's what I'll do. So on my end, you can follow along in the terminal, because I'm going to be copying the same commands. If you go to the istio.io docs site, you should be able to see all the same things that I will be typing into my terminal. So that's all good. So this is the very first thing that I'm going to do. If you actually can see this, I'm actually going to download the Istio CTL command line. And it'll actually download Istio CTL 1.13.7, which is a pretty recent version. It's not the latest, which is okay. I'm okay with that. There's no issues with that. It still works. We're not here to test the latest and greatest of Istio. We want to show you how it works. Now that I have Istio CTL installed, one thing I want to do is I actually want to make this widely available in any directory that I go to. I should still be able to run Istio CTL. So I'll run the export command. Next, I'll take this Istio CTL x precheck, copy that, and paste that in here. So what that'll do is it'll check that Istio CTL is perfect. It'll check to see that my cluster doesn't already have Istio installed and up and running, and we can get to the state where we can just get going anyways. So what I'll do is, because I have Istio already readily installed and ready to go, I just want to get it up in my cluster. So one thing I will do is, let's run the Istio CTL command, because there's a lot of different things we can get out of it, and I want to see something. Istio CTL profile, and then list. Oh, not list. Oops. So if you issue this command here, it'll actually give you several different profiles. It'll give you default profile, a demo profile, an empty profile, an OpenShift profile, preview, remote, and all of these different profiles have different configurations for how Istio can be deployed into your cluster, depending on your use case. Now, in my case, what I would do is I'd actually deploy the demo profile, primarily because I just want to show you certain things and how they work. So I'll go ahead and select the Istio demo profile. And if I type Istio CTL install --set profile equals demo -y. Now remember, my kubeconfig context is set to the current cluster that I'm working off of. And because of that, Istio CTL already knows this, can recognize this, and will issue the installation to that cluster. So the moment I hit yes, let's see what happens. Let's take a look and let's rock and roll. So it has gone ahead to install the Istio core control plane components, which means it's just issuing a bunch of CRDs. It's creating a bunch of custom resource definitions that allows Kubernetes to understand whenever you create a particular configuration in Istio, it'll translate it to a Kubernetes resource. So what the very first file that gets created is actually an operator YAML Istio file. And what goes on is it actually will deploy components like you've seen here. The control plane is deployed. An Istio egress gateway is deployed. An Istio ingress gateway has been deployed. And it's telling us that the installation is complete. Let's go take a look at that cluster. kubectl get nodes -oy, just to make sure that we've still got the same cluster and we can see that. Let's do a kubectl get pods -a. -A tells me, get me all the pods and all the name systems, all the namespaces. So it's telling me that I have a number of different pods in the kube system namespace. You can see that the Cilium pods are running. You can see that in my Istio system namespace, I have 3 pods. I have the control plane, I have the ingress gateway, and I have the egress gateway. Now, what are these components? The Istio D component is our control plane. Anytime I create a configuration, that configuration can be a routing configuration, can be a security configuration, or an observability configuration. Istio D processes that and tells the Kubernetes API, hey, these are the resources I need you to create on my behalf. So it'll actually work with the admission webhook controller, the mutating admission webhook controller, to effectively allow for Istio to modify and mutate objects inside of your Kubernetes environment. We're not going to get into the details of that today because we have limited time, but you can think of the Istio D as the control plane, which makes decisions on behalf of how routing should occur, how security should occur, and how observability should occur. From a security standpoint, it's the one that's issuing certificates to your services and your workloads. Now, the Istio ingress gateway is going to be the entry point for your requests from the outside world to come in. So I, as an end user, I'm going to http://google.com or solo.io.com or solo.io, right? If I'm going to solo.io, I am making a request to an API endpoint to give me a response. In our case, the Istio ingress gateway is going to receive that request and transfer that request to the actual service that needs to respond to it, and then facilitate the response back to me as a client. That's what the ingress gateway is doing. The egress gateway is used for communications either to the outside world or to other components inside of the cluster or to outside to other clusters as well. We won't really make use of the egress gateway. We will with the ingress gateway. Now, we have deployed Istio. It's up and running. It's working. We know that, and I've verified that because my pods are running. What do we do next? Now, there's an element here of sidecars, right? So remember I mentioned something called a sidecar resource earlier on. Rohit, you remember that sidecar proxy? So we actually have to tell Kubernetes and Istio which environment, which namespace is going to allow us to inject sidecars into the pods in that namespace. So what we actually have to do is we have to label the namespace. And the way we go about doing so is we can label a namespace by basically just using this command, kubectl label namespace default. We're specifying the default namespace, and we're providing the label istio-injection equals enabled. So if I type in kubectl get ns --show labels, you will see that the default namespace has the Istio injection equals enabled label, which means that any pods that get deployed into this namespace will have a sidecar resource. Now, just to show you something, right? I'm going to do a kubectl create ns test, right? Now, if I do a kubectl get ns, We see all the different namespaces. If I do a kubectl get an S and I'll do an up arrow show labels, you see that my test namespace does not have that same label here. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a pod, kubectl run nginx dash dash image equals nginx dash dash n test. Deploys the pod into test. Okay. If I do a kubectl get pods dash n test, what do I see there? I see a pod getting created inside of that namespace. But pay attention to something. 0 out of 1. Well, I'll just do an up arrow again. 1 out of 1. Now this is inside of the test namespace. Now, if we do a deployment inside of the default namespace, what we're actually going to deploy is the book info app. So we're going to go kubectl apply dash f samples dash book info slash platform slash kube slash book info.yaml. By the way, before I apply this command, right? Let's do an ls. You can see a bunch of things here. Let's switch into Istio 1.13.7. And if I hit there and if I do an ls, if I do a cd samples, and if I do a cd book info, and then I type in platform kube book info ls. Okay, do you see that book info YAML file here? All of this came from when we originally curled and downloaded the Istio CTL. So the moment I downloaded that, all of these sample add-ons were added as well, which means it should be very easy for me to deploy the book info app because I just downloaded the YAML configuration for it. So let's go back and just type in cd so that I get back into my original root directory here. I type in.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question in between, because if beginner is trying to understand this thing, like how he will know like booking info we have to apply. So is this mentioned in the doc or like?
Yeah. So all of this is actually inside of the documentation. I can't share my doc screen yet.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
But if I'm verbatim copying exactly what's in the doc, so it should be very, very straightforward for you to follow along. Oops, I keep getting the wrong pathway. So let me just Control C out of here, and let's change into and reapply this. Okay. Now, what has happened is that YAML configuration deployed a number of services, a service account, and a number of different applications. So if I do a kubectl get all in my default namespace, you can see that all these pods are deployed. All of these services are being deployed. These are the deployments that back these pods and the replica sets, which we don't really worry about too much. But let's give it a few seconds to see if everything's up and online. Pods initializing, but look, take a look at something. There's a sidecar now. Still kubectl get pods. If you see this, right, now we have 2 out of 2 running as opposed to what we saw with the nginx. So what if you want to only enable it for a single application in the default namespace? So if you wanted to enable sidecar injection for a single application in a default namespace, there's an approach that you can take by doing manual sidecar injection, where you actually modify the deployment configuration for that app, and you actually inject the sidecar spec inside of that YAML configuration. So it's a little bit more manual, but it's a lot more work. If you think about it, like if you wanted to do that, you're better off actually creating a separate namespace, putting the app inside of that namespace, even though it might be one single app, and then proceeding to mark that namespace or label it so that Istio can inject the sidecar to it. So if I go ahead and hit up arrow, all my pods have the sidecar now. If I hit up arrow -n test, this nginx pod only has a single container in it. Okay, so we've verified that everything seems to be working just fine. So there's a couple of things we'll do now. We're actually going to quickly test from one pod to another to make sure that we can communicate with it. So what I'm going to run is a kubectl exec command into a particular pod, right? We're actually looking for any sort of pod that has a label with app equals ratings. So basically, this is just saving me the hassle of actually having to go look up the actual pod, the ratings pod, and the name of it, just in case it changes from, every time we redeploy that pod. Because guess what? Anytime you redeploy that deployment or you cycle that deployment, a new instance of that pod comes up with a different name. So this one command here will actually get that information for us without having to just go run a kubectl get pods, copy and paste kind of deal. So by execing into this particular pod, I'm actually running a curl command against the product page, and I should actually get a response internally because I'm doing it internally. So that is the response I get. I get simple bookstore as a response. So that's pretty interesting because that's telling me that internally amongst my services, they can communicate with each other. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to use the ingress gateway to be able to curl towards, we're going to use the ingress gateway to be able to access that application. So we're going to come from the outside world through the ingress gateway to access that application. So let's go ahead and do that. There's actually another YAML file that you will deploy. If you follow the documentation of the Get Started guide, that YAML file is the bookinfo-gateway YAML, which just is specifying a configuration for the ingress gateway. And we can even take a look at it. So if I did a cat, here, let's do this.
So it is generally used for allowing your website or your application to the outside world. So
Correct.
as you can check in the documentation, it is mentioned like you can allow this gateway using this YAML. You can allow the every traffic of outside world to this application. Yes,
exactly. So if you actually take a look at this YAML file for a second here, there are two parts to it. There's a gateway configuration, which is effectively telling Istio, configure your gateway with this name, right? And I want you to listen in on port 80 for any sort of HTTP traffic for any host in your environment, okay? And then as a follow-on, there's a specific object called a virtual service. The virtual service is basically a routing configuration. How do I get to each one of these endpoints? So any host is going to listen in for this. I'm going to use my book info gateway, which is specified up here, to access the particular any host. And as I'm coming in, if I am going to I'm going to always go to the product page, right? It's going to route me directly to the product page. But if I add in any one of these paths, they'll take me directly to those paths. But I will always listen in on HTTP port 80 or any sort of traffic coming inbound, because that's where I expect traffic to come in, right? And according to whatever is specified as a path, we'll go there, right? So right now I have deployed it. It's all ready to go, except there's a few other things I need to do. I actually need to get the service IP, right? Because I need to be able to access this app on the outside. So if I do a kubectl get SBC Istio ingress, and this is in the instructions as well, -n Istio system, Istio ingress gateway is what I need to specify. If you look here, right, the external IP is 212.2.243.9, okay? Now, there's another set of commands here that, if you look in the documentation, is effectively a set of environment variables that we're going to set. So let's look at the very first line, export ingress host. So kubectl -n Istio system get service ingress gateway, and we're getting the IP address. So this IP address I just got is effectively what I'm doing here. I'm just assigning it to the ingress host variable, okay? Now, if you look at this ingress port, I'm running a kubectl -n Istio system get service Istio ingress gateway -o JSON path .spec.ports, and I'm looking for the HTTP2 port. Okay, I don't know what that is. I I can echo the variable very shortly so we can know what that is. And then we're also getting the secure ingress port. So I imagine the HTTP2 port would happen to be 80, and the HTTPS port would be 443. So all I'm really doing is getting the service IP that I will access this from. I'm getting the secure port and the non-secure port, and I'm assigning them to environment variables. So if I hit enter, the environment variables have been set. If I do an echo, ingress host, that's my IP. If I do an echo on ingress port, that's the port for the ingress port. If I do an echo on the secure ingress port, 443, exactly what I thought it to be. Does that make sense to you, Rohit?
Yes, definitely.
Perfect. That's what I love to see. That's what I love to hear. Okay, so now we should be able to access this application. Okay, so there's another thing I need to do is I need to export the gateway URL. The gateway URL just combines this piece of information with this. Okay, that's all it does. So if I hit enter, and if I do an echo, HTTP / gateway URL, which is this variable here, which translates to this IP and this port number, gateway URL, / product page, because that's where we want to go, right? What should happen? That did not work because I didn't end the quote. Oops.
Oh.
But that did not work as expected because I must have messed
Record
up.
dollar.
Because I forgot the dollar sign.
Yeah.
And something else didn't work. What else did I forget?
No. You have entered the dollar and
Echo HTTP / gateway _URL / product page.
Oh, you just have to
Yeah.
remove that HTTP also. You just echo dollar. Yeah. Echo dollar.
Oh yeah, no, it wants me to paste the output into my browser. So I have the output here. Sorry, I was misreading this document. I'm like, this is what happens when I wake up at 5:30 in the morning and I only have a single coffee. So let me quickly reshare my other screen that I was sharing momentarily, right? The get started one. And I'm going to take those details. Look at that. Look at that. That's awesome. That is our application up and running.
What our product page.
That is our product page. Yes, Pratik Kumar. For some reason, I kept thinking that echo would be curl. You're right, run curl. So let me run curl. I'll go back to the terminal. Give me a second. But we know our application is working because I'm able to hit the product page through the ingress gateway. Okay, I'm going to give you an analogy. If you were working in a traditional network environment and you had a firewall at the perimeter of your network, let's say an ASA firewall, a PIX firewall, whatever firewall you want, pfSense for that matter. It is going to be the entry point for all traffic inbound into your environment, correct? It's going to accept or reject connections. This is exactly what the Istio Ingress Gateway is doing for us. It is accepting or rejecting connections based off of the request we make. So we can get super granular when it comes to using the Istio Ingress Gateway. But what's really special about it is it's also an API gateway. So it can do rate limiting. It can discover our services. It can help us route to our services or our upstreams, whatever it is. And this is very special about what Istio can do. Because years ago, Istio could only just provide, a subset of, what it could do today. Today, it's an API gateway, but also a very powerful service mesh. Now, we're just seeing, a very small portion of it. We have a service mesh up and running. Obviously, don't run this in production because it's not going to be fully productionized yet. There's so much more you would need to do. But this is it. Like, this is how we get a service mesh up and running, like in a matter of moments. Well, maybe it took us a little bit longer than a few moments. But the idea, though, is that I've created a network on Kubernetes. I've treated it like a networking environment, configured it like a network, like I normally would. Obviously, the implementation details are a little different, but now I can access my app, and you all saw that. So let's run a curl against that. So I'm going to curl this, and look at that. Look at that. Yeah, I'm getting a bunch of HTML and stuff like that, but that doesn't matter to me. To me, it told me that it responded. It gave me the correct response I expected it to, which means that right now I have Istio up and running. Rohit, do you have any questions about that?
No, no, I understood everything. Like you have taught us like into the depth, so I don't think someone should have that doubts. But I guess for beginners, it will be like little high language. So yeah,
Mhm.
we will try to utilize these sessions for the future by like making it simple as possible. So please
Exactly.
bear with us. It is just start for us also. So yeah, we face some problems of the CO Kubernetes cluster and all. Actually, I guess their API documentation is not working. Like API generation website is having problems something. So I have reported that already there. So it is some downtime or something. So yeah, it is not a problem. We will I will make the authentication done, and next time we will set up on my cluster. It is showing me the cluster, but I am unable to connect through my CLI. So yeah, that is only the problem.
That's fine. That's fine. So maybe for the next time we do this, you'll be able to walk us through that process quickly. We can use the Civo CLI to spin up a number of environments, and then we can expand upon what we're doing with Istio. So
Yeah,
So here's where we'll leave off, right? We have a cluster. We've deployed Istio to it. We have the book info application up and running. When we come back the next time we stream, which I think will be next week Thursday, right? We're going to do this weekly on Thursdays.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, we're going to weekly on Thursdays. The next time we come back and stream, right? We'll continue where we left off. We'll build upon what we learned from Istio. Let's actually look at the docs page very quickly, so I can show you what's going on here. But if we go back to the docs page, right? We're at the stage where we can verify that the app is working, but there are so many other things we want to see. We want to view a dashboard. We want to see how traffic is communicating. And then we want to take it a step further. Like we want to get to this visualization. And then maybe we want to do some request routing, some fault injection, traffic shifting. Maybe we want to turn on peer authentication so that we are encrypting our services and the communication between them.
yeah. We will show the Kiali also, like how
Exactly.
it nice visualization.
Exactly. So, yeah, we're looking forward to this. I enjoyed our very first stream. Rohit, do you have any thoughts, final words you want to share?
Yeah, it is really informative. I guess it will help many people like how to learn the Istio service mesh and how to move forward with this service mesh and CNI and various stuff we are planning for the future. So this is not just for today. So we will get as back as possible within like we will try to get two sessions per week or one session per week, depending on the other type of work. So yeah, we are looking forward to this, and yes, thank you for being nice audience and seeing forward to future live streams. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rohit. And I want to just thank everyone here for coming by and learning with us in public, because there's just so much to learn. There's so many things to do, so many areas, and this is not only great for Rohit, because as he's ramping up, it's also good for me because sometimes there are things that I missed, and I like to go back and cover these areas. Also, I just want to do one more thing, call out to Kumar for talking about the mutating webhooks. I think we should talk about that next time because it's a very fascinating topic. Kubernetes offers a mutating admission webhook controller that allows you to interact with external systems for allowing other objects to mutate objects. It's a very fascinating topic, but it ties into automation, it ties into operators and whatnot. We'll discuss it next time. I want to thank you all for coming again. I hope to see you in the next stream. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us. We're here for you. We're here to, help learn with you. We're here to learn in public, and be easy on us. We'll make mistakes as we go along the way, but we're gonna have fun while we do it, right, Rohit?
Yes.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
yeah, we had some mistakes, and yeah, so it is like you will also face some mistakes. So thing is like we will try to learn in public, so you will know like what is the errors we face. So we are not. It is like complete transparency, so you can understand everything. What is the real world use cases and how the issues are there. So yeah, thank you for being the nice audience. So hello, bye bye.
Take care, everyone. Have a great evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are. We'll talk soon. See ya.